everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome back to our Thursday tips and tricks. I don't know about you, but January is always my UFO month. It's one of the months of the year that I tend to like to dig into my stash, find things that are partially finished and try to bring them closer to completion. And over the course of the holiday season, we actually had somebody give us a question about cutting long border strips out of long length of fabric, and I thought this is a perfect time to deal with one of my UFOs. So this fine little quilt is one that I did a while ago. It's a simple scrap quilt. Got this far, ran out of time, and got put away to the side. And so I thought this is the perfect time to learn how to cut borders. So what I did with this being a scrap quilt was just find a fabric. It's actually in here in a couple of places that I'm going to use on the outer borders. I guesstimated that I would probably put about a 5 or 5.5 inch finished border on there. But the first thing that I did was find a piece of fabric that had enough length for me to be able to do the whole long edge of the project without having to do any piecework. Once I found a piece of fabric, the next thing that I did was to measure the length of the top, and I cut a piece of fabric about 1 inch or 2 longer than the top itself. And that gives me wiggle room. You know me, I like to have a little bit of extra just in case I need to shift it one way or the other. Now, as far as the width goes, you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to cut 4 strips from the length, and the top and bottom are going to have plenty of length on those, so I didn't have to worry about measuring those at this point. Now, once I take my fabric and I cut it to just a little bit longer than the length of the project, the next thing that I do is head to the ironing board and I give everything a really good press. I turn on my steam, I use my sizing or my spray starch or my best press, and I give everything a really nice flat press because I'm going to be folding this differently than what it came to me off the bolt. But you know, something happened. When I took this fabric to my ironing board and pressed it, I realized when it was open and I was doing that step that this fabric had a very definite vertical pattern to it. And I thought, okay, this is good because this is going to help me to teach you how you would deal with a fabric that really had a vertical pattern to it. I didn't really see it until, again, I was pressing. So what I did, and let's pretend we all have patterned vertical patterns on ours. First thing that I would do is give this a press. And then what I'm going to do to give myself some guidelines for cutting is I found what I consider to be the center of each of these vertical vine segments. I'm going to flip this one over so I can actually show you how I went ahead and did this. And I would do this either at my ironing board. My cutting table is usually the biggest place that I have. But when I was looking at the design, I identified this thing right here as a center mark. Okay, and what I did, I noticed that I have one here and I have one here. Now this is a chalk marker. It's called a Chalkadeer, and it has a little wheel, and that's just chalk, and it's going to rub right off my fabric. So that's what I use to do my marking. So I had one here, and then when I looked beside it, I've got that same kind of mark right there. And when I look over the next one, I've got the same mark here and here. And I would mark those roughly at the beginning, but then I took a long ruler, placed it from mark point to mark point, gave myself a line, and then came over and repeated that step right beside it. And when I measured from here to here, the repeat actually ended up being 6 inches, a little wider than I had planned on for the borders, but that's okay. So what I did was mark, and I'm going to turn this back over to the other side. I marked all 4 lines for the 4 border strips that I need to cut. And when I go to cut, I want to remember when I'm doing this, that this is the center of my border strip, not the edge. I could do the edge, but I would lose the benefit of the pretty vine that's in the pattern. Now, So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to cut this, but I marked my 4 centers. I don't have to mark it very long, just about, 20 or 24 inches long. The next thing I'm going to do is take the salvage edges. Remember, I've got this nice and pressed, and I'm going to line up those salvage edges, and I'm going to fold it salvage to salvage to salvage. So it's the same salvage edge is being folded together. I'm going to position that, I'll position it this way, on my cutting mat, and take a few minutes to do some fussing so that that is nice and straight on the edge. Now, if I didn't have a pattern, a vertical pattern on my fabric, what I would do at this stage is simply come with my cutter. I'd line up my 1/2 inch guideline or my 5/8 or my 3/4. I'd make that first cut, and then I'd start cutting 5.5 inches, 5.5 inches, my proposed or thought pattern. But I'm not going to do that with this vertical patterned fabric. Finding the center line, 6 inch was my repeat. So what I'm going to do is put the 3-inch line on the center. And I'm going to kind of follow the seam. And I'm going to make my first cut here. Now it's too difficult. I could run around on the other side and trim that the other way. But the other thing that I could do is then take this strip, rotate it around carefully, and just line up to make my 6-inch wide border strip. There's a little bit of waste there, but you know what? It's going to be better in the end to have the pattern repeat. And then all I have to do, because it's a 6-inch repeat, this happens to be a 6-inch ruler. When I put this back down on there, line up the raw edge, I see that the 3-inch mark of the ruler lines up on that guideline, and I'll continue to cut, to cut, to cut until I have all 4 of my border strips. And you're going to have about this much left. And that's what I save and I use for my binding. It's a nice size. It's probably going to be about 18 or more inches. And when you cut those for bias, it makes a great binding. If you missed that tips and tricks, go back and watch that. But once I've got a strip now that is manageable, now I'll take this strip, measure it to the precision size that I need for my top. Put it on the 2 long sides first, give them a press, add the 2 short sides on the top and bottom, measuring to make sure that I'm getting that correct measurement. And this top is going to be that much closer to being a finished project. So there you have it. I hope that made sense. If when you fold it in half once and then twice, you have more than 24 inches, you might have to put another fold in it. But try to keep things as nice and straight along the salvage edge as you can. Now, couple of tidbits. First of all, we are extremely busy here at Studio 180 Design, and as much as I love doing tips and tricks with you, I'm finding that it's becoming a challenge. So we are going to be changing our format. Instead of every week for our Thursday tips and tricks, we're going to go to every other week. And a prime example of that, next week at this time, we're actually going to be doing the first ever virtual Road to California show. And this is a 4-day show. It starts on Wednesday. If you'd like to join us there, you can register at the Road to California show, have access to all the things that we're sharing with quilt attendees, as well as look at all the other vendors. And you know, Road to California is the 2nd largest show in the country. This is one that you're going to enjoy being at and enjoy attending. So you guys take care. I don't know what we're going to be doing next because Road to California is next on my list, but I'll see you in a couple weeks for Thursday Tips and Tricks. Take care, everybody.